Elena pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders, but it did nothing to stop the cold from seeping through her scrubs. The bus stop bench was made of metal, and sitting on it felt like putting ice cubes against her back. She checked. Her phone again. 2:17 a.m. The last bus was supposed to come at 2, but the digital sign kept flashing delayed in red letters. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers. 16 hours at the hospital had been brutal today. 3 emergency surgeries, 2 cardiac arrests, and a little girl who cried for her mom all night. Elena loved being a nurse, but days like this made her question if she was strong enough for this job. Now, with her car sitting broken in her apartment parking lot, she was stuck waiting in the freezing rain for a bus that might never come. The storm had started around midnight. What began as light drizzle was now a proper downpour. Water dripped from her dark hair onto her shoulders, and she could feel it soaking through her jacket. She had $43 in her checking account until payday on Friday. Just enough for bus fare and maybe some ramen noodles. Getting a taxi home would cost $30, money she simply didn't have. Elena thought about her mom back in Phoenix, probably sleeping in the hospital bed where she'd been for the past month. The cancer treatments were working, the doctors said, but they were expensive. Every extra dollar Elena earned went toward those medical bills. Her car breaking down was just another problem she couldn't afford to fix right now. A black sedan pulled up to the red light near the bus stop. Through the rain-streaked windows, Elena could see someone in the back seat. Rich people, probably, heading home from some fancy dinner while she sat here like a drowned rat. The light turned green, but the car didn't move. Traffic was backing up because of the storm. Inside the sedan, Alexander Reed loosened his tie and rubbed his temples. The charity dinner had raised $2 million for cancer research, but all the speeches about hope and healing had left him feeling empty. It had been 8 months since his sister died, and events like tonight just reminded him how helpless money could be against some problems. "Sir, we might be here a while," his driver James said from the front seat. The storm knocked down some power lines up ahead. Traffic's not moving. Alexander nodded and looked out the window. That's when he saw her. A young woman sitting alone at the bus stop, soaked to the bone and shivering. She kept checking her phone and looking down the empty street, clearly waiting for something that wasn't coming. Her dark hair was plastered to her head, and even from this distance, he could see she was wearing hospital scrubs. "James, pull over there," Alexander said, pointing to the bus stop. "Sir, is everything all right?" "That woman. She's been sitting there since we got stuck in traffic. Look at her, she's freezing." James looked uncertain. "Sir, maybe she's waiting for someone. We shouldn't interfere. She's wearing scrubs. She probably just got off work and needs to get home. Pull over." The driver hesitated but did as he was told. Alexander grabbed his umbrella and coat from the seat beside him. He'd learned a long time ago to trust his instincts, and something about this situation felt wrong. No one should be sitting alone in a storm like this. Elena looked up when she heard car doors closing. A tall man in an expensive suit was walking toward her, holding a large umbrella and what looked like a coat. Her first instinct was to be suspicious. Late at night, alone, a stranger approaching. Her mom had always taught her to be careful. "Excuse me," the man said, stopping a few feet away. His voice was calm and polite. "I noticed you've been waiting here for a while. Are you all right?" Elena studied his face. He looked genuinely concerned, not threatening. Still, she kept her guard up. "I'm fine, just waiting for the bus." "In this storm?" He gestured at the rain pouring down around them. "I don't think any buses are running tonight. The roads are flooding." As if to prove his point, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from the transit authority. "All late-night routes suspended due to severe weather. Service resumes at 6 a.m. Elena stared at the message and felt her heart sink. 4 hours until the buses started running again. 4 hours sitting in this freezing rain. She looked up at the stranger who was still standing there with his umbrella, getting wet himself just to keep some of the rain off her. "Miss, this storm isn't letting up," he said gently. "You're coming with me. I can't leave you here like this." "I don't even know you," Elena said, though her teeth were starting to chatter. "My name is Alexander. I was just leaving a dinner downtown, and my driver and I got stuck in traffic. I've been watching you sit here for 20 minutes and you're going to get hypothermia if you stay out here much longer. Elena looked at him more carefully. His suit was well-tailored but not flashy. His shoes were expensive leather, now getting ruined in the puddles. He didn't look like someone with bad intentions. He looked like someone who was worried about a stranger's safety. I can't pay you back, she said quietly. For a ride, I mean. I don't have much money. Alexander's expression softened. I'm not asking for payment, I'm asking you to let me help because it's the right thing to do. Elena felt another wave of cold shiver through her body. She was probably being stupid, but her options were limited. Stay here and possibly freeze, or trust this stranger who seemed genuinely concerned about her welfare. Okay, she said finally, but somewhere public, not your house or anything. Of course, Alexander said, immediately taking off his coat and wrapping it around her shoulders. The coat was warm and smelled like expensive cologne. James knows a good diner that's open all night. You can warm up, have some coffee, and when the storm passes, we'll make sure you get home safely. Elena stood up on shaky legs, surprised by how much the cold had affected her. Alexander held the umbrella over both of them as they walked to his car. James, the driver, got out to open the door for her. Thank you, Elena whispered, as she slid into the warm back seat. She couldn't remember the last time someone had shown her this kind of kindness without expecting something in return. You're welcome, Alexander said, settling in beside her as James started the car. Now let's get you somewhere warm. As they pulled away from the bus stop, Elena looked back at the empty bench where she'd been sitting. Sometimes, she thought, help came from the most unexpected places. The warmth of the car was like a hug Elena didn't know she needed. She pulled Alexander's coat tighter around herself, still shivering but finally starting to feel her fingers again. Through the windows, she watched the empty streets pass by. Most of the city was asleep, but here she was in a stranger's car, trusting someone she'd met 5 minutes ago. There's a place called Mel's Diner about 10 minutes from here, James called from the front seat. They're open 24 hours and they make good coffee. Perfect, Alexander said. He looked at Elena, who was staring out the window. Are you feeling better? You were shaking pretty badly back there. Elena nodded. I'm okay now. Thank you for the coat. She paused, then added, I should probably ask, you're not some kind of serial killer, are you? Alexander laughed, and Elena was surprised by how genuine it sounded. No, I promise I'm not a serial killer, though I suppose that's exactly what a serial killer would say. Despite everything, Elena smiled. Great. Now I'm really worried. Well, James has been my driver for 8 years, Alexander said. James, would you say I'm a serial killer? Definitely not, sir, James replied with a chuckle, though you do kill it at board meetings. Elena found herself relaxing slightly. These didn't seem like dangerous people. They seemed normal. Well, normal for rich people anyway. Mel's Diner looked like something from the 1950s, all chrome and red vinyl booths. Even at this hour, there were a few other customers, a police officer drinking coffee, a tired-looking couple sharing pie, and someone who might have been a taxi driver reading a newspaper. Elena felt more comfortable here than she would have at some fancy restaurant. Alexander held the door open for her, and they found a booth near the back. A waitress with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back and upon it came over immediately. Well, honey, you look like you've been through the ringer, she said to Elena. Let me get you some hot coffee and a menu. Thank you, Elena said gratefully. Could I also get some hot tea if you have it? Of course, dear. And you, sir? Coffee, please, Alexander said, and maybe some soup for the lady. What do you recommend? Chicken noodles made fresh tonight, real good for warming up. When the waitress left, Alexander and Elena sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Elena studied his face in the diners. Bright lights. He looked to be in his early 30s with dark hair and tired eyes. There was something sad about him, like he was carrying a heavy weight. So, Elena said, wrapping her hands around the warm coffee mug the waitress had brought. What kind of dinner keeps you out until 2 in the morning? Alexander stirred his coffee slowly. A charity event. One of those things where rich people eat expensive food and write checks to feel better about themselves. Elena raised an eyebrow. You don't sound very enthusiastic about it. Don't get me wrong. Charity work is important. It's just... He paused, searching for the right words. Sometimes it feels like we're just throwing money at problems instead of actually understanding them. What kind of charity? Elena asked. Cancer research. Alexander's voice got quieter. My sister died 8 months ago. Leukemia. I've been trying to do something meaningful with her memory, but I'm not sure I'm doing it right. Elena felt her heart clench. I'm so sorry. How old was she? 26. She was a teacher. Loved kids, wanted to make a difference in the world. Alexander looked up at Elena. She spent her last few months at St. Mary's Hospital downtown. Elena nearly choked on her coffee. St. Mary's, that's where I work. Really? Alexander leaned forward. What department? I float between a few, but I spend a lot of time in oncology, the cancer ward. Elena set down her mug, thinking. What was her name? I might have known her. Lily Reed. Alexander watched Elena's face carefully. Elena's eyes widened. Lily? With the curly red hair? Always reading books to the kids in pediatric. Oncology? Alexander nodded, his throat tight. That was her. Oh my God, Elena breathed. She was amazing. I only worked with her a few times, but she was so brave. And funny, she made everyone laugh, even when she was really sick. Tears gathered in Alexander's eyes. Yeah, that was Lily. Elena reached across the table without thinking and put her hand over his. She talked about you all the time. Her big brother who worried too much. She was so proud of you. Alexander looked down at Elena's small hand covering his. I should have done more. Should have found better doctors, better treatments. Hey, Elena said firmly. Don't do that to yourself. I saw how hard she fought. I saw how much love surrounded her. Money can't fix everything, you know. The waitress brought Elena's soup and they sat quietly while she ate. The warm broth helped chase away the last of the cold, and Elena realized she'd been hungrier than she thought. So you're a nurse? Alexander said finally. Do you like it? Elena smiled. I love it. It's hard. Really hard. But I can't imagine doing anything else. I'm actually in nursing school part-time trying to get my bachelor's degree. That must be exhausting, working full-time and going to school. It is, Elena admitted. But my mom always said education was the one thing no one could take away from you. She worked 3 jobs to put herself through college. Where is she now? Elena's face grew serious. Phoenix. She's sick too. Breast cancer. That's why I work so many extra shifts. The treatments are expensive and insurance doesn't cover everything. Alexander nodded, understanding more than Elena realized. That's why you don't have a car. Well, I have a car. Had a car. It broke down last week and I can't afford to fix it right now. Elena shrugged. It's okay. I can take the bus. Usually. What's wrong with it? Some kind of engine problem. The mechanic said it would cost about $800 to fix. I don't have that kind of money right now. Alexander was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone. I know someone who might be able to help. A mechanic who owes me a favor. Oh, no, Elena said quickly. I can't let you do that. I barely know you. It's not charity, Alexander said. It's problem solving. You need your car fixed, and I know someone who can do it reasonably. Think of it as networking. Elena looked suspicious. How reasonably? Well, let me call him and see what he says. Alexander stood up. I'll be right back. While Alexander stepped outside to make his call, Elena sat in the diner booth and tried to process everything that had happened. 3 hours ago, she'd been stranded in the rain, feeling sorry for herself. Now she was warm, fed, and talking to someone who had known Lily. Someone who understood loss and was trying to do something good with his pain. When Alexander came back, he looked pleased. Good news, my friend Tony can look at your car tomorrow. He says if it's what you described, he can probably fix it for about $300. That's still a lot of money for me, Elena said quietly. What if you could pay it off over time? $25 a week? Elena looked at him carefully. Why are you doing this? You don't know me? Alexander sat down and met her eyes. Because Lily always said that kindness was the only thing that really mattered. And because everyone deserves to get home safely at night. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I'll pay you back. Every penny. I know you will, Alexander said. But let's just focus on getting your car running first. Outside, the storm was finally starting to calm down. 2 weeks after that stormy night, Elena was walking through the children's cancer ward when she heard a familiar voice coming from room 314. She stopped in her tracks, listening. That couldn't be who she thought it was. She peeked around the doorframe and froze. Alexander was sitting beside 8-year-old Tommy's bed, reading from a picture book about dragons. Tommy was giggling at the funny voices Alexander made for each character. Elena watched in amazement as this man she'd met at a diner transformed into someone completely natural with children. And then the brave little dragon said. Alexander looked up and saw Elena standing in the doorway. His face lit up with a genuine smile. Elena, what are you doing here? I work here, remember? Elena said, stepping into the room. The question is, what are you doing here? Tommy looked between them curiously. You two know each other. We're friends, Alexander said simply. Elena, this is Tommy. Tommy, this is Elena. She's one of the best nurses in the whole hospital. Elena felt her cheeks warm. Hi, Tommy. How are you feeling today? Better. Alexander brought me 3 new books, and he's going to come back tomorrow to finish this one. Elena looked at Alexander with surprise. You're coming back tomorrow? I volunteer here twice a week, Alexander said, looking slightly embarrassed. Started about 10 days ago. After they said goodbye to Tommy, Elena walked with Alexander toward the elevator. Her mind was spinning with questions. So you volunteer here now? She asked as they waited for the elevator doors to open. Yeah, I figured it was better than just writing checks from a distance. I wanted to actually do something that mattered. Elena was impressed but also curious. How did you even get approved so quickly? The volunteer process usually takes weeks. Alexander looked uncomfortable. Well, I made a phone call to the hospital director. We've met at a few charity events. The elevator arrived, and they stepped inside. Elena pressed the button for the main floor, thinking about what Alexander had just said. Something was nagging at her. Alexander, she said slowly, what exactly do you do for work? Alexander was quiet for a moment. I run a company. What kind of company? Manufacturing, mostly. Some real estate development. Elena sensed there was more to it, but the elevator opened before she could ask more questions. They walked toward the main lobby together. Elena, there you are. Dr. Peterson, the head of oncology, hurried over to them. I need you to... Oh, he stopped when he saw Alexander. His whole demeanor changed, becoming formal and nervous. Mr. Reed, I didn't know you were visiting today. Elena looked between Dr. Peterson and Alexander, confused by the sudden tension. Just my regular volunteer hours, Dr. Peterson, Alexander said calmly. Elena was showing me around. Of course. Elena, we'll talk later about that schedule change. Dr. Peterson hurried away, looking flustered. Elena stared after him, then turned to Alexander. Okay, what was that about? Why was Dr. Peterson acting so weird? Alexander sighed. Elena, there's something I should probably tell you. What? My company. It's called Reed Industries. I'm not just an employee there. I own it. Elena blinked. You own a company called Reed Industries? Yes. Reed Industries. As in the Reed Industries that just donated $5 million to build the new pediatric wing? Alexander nodded reluctantly. Elena felt the world shift slightly. You're that Alexander Reed. The billionaire Alexander Reed. Well, technically, I'm not a billionaire. Oh my God. Elena sat down heavily on a nearby bench. You're Alexander Reed. I've been having coffee with Alexander Reed. Alexander sat down beside her. I'm the same person you met at the diner, Elena. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, Elena said, her voice rising slightly. Do you know what people are going to think? Do you know what they're already thinking? As if to prove her point, Elena noticed several hospital staff members looking in their direction and whispering to each other. Dr. Mitchell from the emergency department was staring at them with obvious curiosity. I don't care what they think, Alexander said quietly. Well, I do. I have to work with these people every day. Elena rubbed her temples. This explains so much. Why Dr. Peterson has been treating me differently lately. Why I got moved to the better shifts this week. They think I'm getting special treatment because of you. Are you? Alexander asked. I don't know. I thought it was just coincidence, but now... Elena trailed off, feeling sick to her stomach. Over the next few days, Elena's fears proved justified. The whispers followed her everywhere. In the break room, conversations stopped when she walked in. Her colleagues looked at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright jealousy. So, her friend Rita said during lunch on Thursday, you and the hospital's biggest donor, huh? It's not like that, Elena said tiredly. We're just friends. Friends? Rita raised an eyebrow. Elena, this guy could buy the entire hospital. What could you two possibly have in common? Elena couldn't explain about Lily, about that night, in the storm, about how Alexander made her laugh or how genuinely he cared about the patients. She couldn't explain that when they talked. She forgot about his money entirely. Meanwhile, Alexander was facing his own problem. He was having lunch with his business partner David at their usual restaurant when David brought up Elena. Alex, people are talking, David said, cutting his steak. About you and this nurse. What people? Board members. Investors. They're saying you're having some kind of midlife crisis. Alexander frowned. I'm 32, that's hardly midlife. You know what I mean. First you start volunteering at the hospital like some college student. Now you're dating a nurse. I'm not dating anyone, Alexander interrupted. Are you sure? Because the photos suggest otherwise. What photos? David pulled out his phone and showed Alexander a picture clearly taken with a telephoto lens. It showed Alexander and Elena walking out of the hospital together, talking and smiling. Where did this come from? Alexander demanded. Someone posted it on social media. The caption says something about hospital romances and conflicts of interest. Alexander stared at the photo, feeling anger build in his chest. This is ridiculous. Elena and I are friends. Even if we were more than friends, it's nobody's business. It is our business when it affects the company, David said seriously. The board is already concerned about your emotional state since Lily died. They're worried you're not thinking clearly. My emotional state is fine. Is it? Because you've donated over $10 million to various charities in the past 8 months. You've started volunteering at a hospital. And now you're spending time with a woman who, frankly, has nothing to offer you financially. Alexander's jaw tightened. Maybe that's exactly why I enjoy her company. Alex, be realistic. What future could you possibly have with someone from a completely different world? That afternoon, Alexander found Elena in the hospital parking garage. She was sitting in her newly repaired car, but she wasn't driving anywhere. She was just sitting there, staring at the steering wheel. He knocked gently on her window. Elena looked up and he could see she'd been crying. Elena? What's wrong? She rolled down the window. I can't do this, Alexander. Can't do what? This. Us. Whatever this is. Elena gestured between them. Do you know what happened today? The nursing director called me into her office. She wanted to make sure I understood the hospital's policy about relationships with donors. She didn't say I was in trouble, but the message was clear. Alexander felt his heart sink. Elena, and then I found out that 3 nurses applied for the weekend shift I got last week. 3 nurses with more experience than me, but I got it. Want to guess why? Your qualifications. Because they're all afraid to say no to anything that might make you unhappy, Elena finished. I'm getting opportunities I haven't earned, and everyone knows it. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to me. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. So what are you saying? Elena looked up at him with sad eyes. I'm saying that maybe your friend David is right. Maybe we're from two different worlds. As Alexander watched Elena drive away, he realized that money, which had always solved his problems before, might be the very thing that was destroying. The best thing that had happened to him in months. 3 days passed without Elena and Alexander speaking to each other. Elena threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts and avoiding the areas of the hospital where she might run into him. Alexander continued his volunteer hours, but the joy had gone out of it. Even little Tommy noticed something was wrong. Why do you look so sad? Tommy asked during their Tuesday reading session. Alexander tried to smile. I'm not sad, buddy, just tired. My mom says when grown-ups are tired, it usually means they're worried about something. Alexander looked at this wise 8-year-old and realized he was right. He was worried. Worried that he'd lost Elena's friendship because of something he couldn't control. On Thursday morning, Elena was restocking supplies in the oncology ward when her phone rang. It was her mom's doctor in Phoenix. Miss Rodriguez, I'm calling about your mother's latest test results. Elena's heart stopped. Is she okay? Well, the good news is that the chemotherapy is working. The tumors have shrunk significantly. Elena felt relief flood through her. That's wonderful news. However, we've found that the cancer has spread to her liver. We need to start a more aggressive treatment plan immediately. The relief vanished, replaced by cold fear. What kind of treatment? A combination of new chemotherapy drugs and targeted therapy. It's very promising, but I have to be honest with you, it's expensive. Even with insurance, you're looking at about $15,000 out of pocket. Elena sank into a nearby chair. 15,000? I know it's a lot. We have some payment plan options, but the treatment needs to start within the next 2 weeks for the best chance of success. After the call ended, Elena sat in the empty supply room and tried not to panic. $15,000 might as well have been $15 million. She made decent money as a nurse, but between her living expenses and what she was already sending to Phoenix, there was nothing left. She could take out loans, but her credit wasn't great. She could ask for more shifts, but there were only so many hours in a week. The thought came unbidden. She could ask Alexander for help. No. Absolutely not. That was exactly the kind of thing people expected. The poor nurse using the rich guy for money. She wouldn't prove them right. Elena spent the next 2 days researching loans and payment options, but everything she found required credit scores she didn't have or monthly payments she couldn't afford. Desperation was setting in when Rita found her crying in the break room on Saturday night. Elena, what's wrong? You've been acting strange all week. Elena told her everything. About her mom, the treatment, the money she didn't have. Why don't you ask your rich boyfriend for help? Rita said practically. He's not my boyfriend, and I can't ask him for money. Why not? He could write that check without even thinking about it, because then everyone would be right about me. They'd say I was only friends with him for his money. Rita sighed. Elena, sometimes pride is a luxury you can't afford, but Elena's pride wasn't the only thing being tested. On Sunday morning, Alexander woke up to his phone buzzing nonstop. David was calling. Alex, we have a problem. Check your email right now. Alexander opened his laptop and found dozens of news alerts. The subject lines made his stomach drop. Billionaire CEO's secret hospital romance and power and money inside a modern fairy tale, and from rags to riches, nurse catches a prince. He clicked on the first article and felt sick. There were photos of him and Elena from that day at the hospital, but also pictures that must have been taken with a telephoto lens. Him walking her to her car, them talking outside the diner, even one of them at the coffee shop near her apartment building. The article painted Elena as a gold digger and him as a naive rich man being taken advantage of. It mentioned her mother's cancer and suggested Elena was using her family's illness to manipulate Alexander's emotions. The writer had somehow found out about the car repair and presented it as evidence of Elena's financial dependence. Alexander's hands shook as he read the cruel words about Elena. They described her as calculating and opportunistic, and suggested she had planned their meeting at the bus stop. His phone rang again. This time it was Elena. "Alexander, I'm so sorry," she said immediately. "I had no idea." "Elena, none of this is your fault." "Yes, it is. I should have stayed away from you. I knew this would happen." "Where are you?" "At work. Everyone's staring at me. Dr. Peterson wants to see me in his office at noon. I think they're going to ask me to transfer to another hospital." Alexander felt anger boil up inside him. "They can't do that. You're an excellent nurse." "It doesn't matter how good I am if my presence causes problems for the hospital. What if donors get upset? What if this affects funding?" "I won't let them punish you for this. Alexander, please don't make this worse. If you try to intervene, it'll just prove their point." After Elena hung up, Alexander stared at his phone for a long moment. Then he called his lawyer. "Michael, I need you to find out who leaked those photos and that information to the press." "Alex, maybe you should consider whether this relationship is worth the trouble it's causing. Just find out who did this." By Monday afternoon, Michael had answers. "It was your business partner, David. He hired a private investigator to document your activities with the nurse. He leaked it to a reporter friend of his." Alexander felt betrayed and furious. He drove straight to David's office and confronted him. "How could you do this? You've destroyed Elena's reputation for what? To prove some point about class differences?" David didn't even look sorry. "I did it to protect you and the company. This woman was going to become a problem eventually. Better to deal with it now. Elena never asked me for anything. Not once." "Really? What about her car repair? What about her convenient job at the hospital you donate to? What about her sick mother who needs expensive treatment?" Alexander froze. "How do you know about her mother?" "Because I had her investigated." "Alex, did you really think it was coincidence that you met a nurse whose mother has cancer, just like your sister did? This woman has been playing you from the beginning." "That's not true, isn't it? Her mother's treatment costs $15,000. How long do you think it would have taken her to ask you for that money?" Alexander left David's office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. What if I'd was right? What if the whole thing had been planned? But then he remembered Elena's face that night at the bus stop. Cold, scared, genuinely surprised by his kindness. He remembered how she'd tried to pay for her own coffee at the diner, how she'd insisted on paying back the car repair, how she'd refused to let him help even when she clearly needed it. No, David was wrong. Elena wasn't manipulating anyone. She was just someone trying to take care of her family, the same way Alexander had tried to take care of Lily. That evening, Alexander drove to Elena's apartment building. He'd never been there before, but he'd looked up her address. He sat in his car for 20 minutes trying to figure out what to say. Finally, he went upstairs and knocked on her door. Elena opened it with red, puffy eyes. "Alexander, you shouldn't be here. I know what David did. I know he leaked those photos and stories." Elena's face crumpled. "It doesn't matter who did it. The damage is done. I've been asked to take a leave of absence while the hospital decides how to handle the situation. Elena, let me help. I can fix this." "How? By throwing more money at it? By using your influence to force them to keep me? Don't you see? That's exactly the problem. I can't have a life where every good thing that happens to me is because of who you are." Alexander felt desperate. What if I wasn't wealthy? What if I was just a regular guy? Elena looked at him sadly. "But you're not, and I can't pretend that doesn't matter." As Alexander drove home, he realized that for the first time in his life, all his money and power were useless. They were actually making everything worse. The very things that were supposed to solve problems were creating them instead. He thought about Elena, alone in her apartment, probably crying over a situation she hadn't asked for. He thought about her mother, waiting for treatment that might not come because Elena was too proud to ask for help. And he realized that sometimes Caring about someone meant making choices that went against everything you'd been taught about how the world worked. Alexander didn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about Elena's words. I can't have a life where every good thing that happens to me is because of who you are. She was right, and that realization hurt more than anything David had said. The next morning, he made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Alexander called an emergency board meeting at Reed Industries. 12 of the city's most powerful business leaders gathered in the conference room, expecting to discuss quarterly reports. Instead, Alexander stood at the head of the table and said something no one expected. I want to talk about the news articles that have been circulating about my personal life. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Alex, I don't think that's necessary. Actually, it is necessary. Alexander's voice was calm but firm. Because someone in this room violated my privacy and hurt an innocent woman in the process. He pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. I have proof that David hired a private investigator to follow me and leak information to the press. Information that was meant to damage Elena Rodriguez's reputation. The room went silent. David's face turned red. I did it to protect you, David said defensively. That woman was going to be a problem. That woman, Alexander interrupted, is one of the most dedicated healthcare workers I've ever met. She works 16-hour shifts to take care of people like my sister was. She sends money to her sick mother instead of buying herself decent clothes. She wouldn't even let me buy her dinner without insisting on paying me back. Alexander looked around the table at faces he'd known for years. David thought he was protecting me from someone who wanted my money. But Elena never asked me for anything. Not once. In fact, she's been trying to stay away from me because she knew people would assume exactly what David assumed. He turned to David directly. You want to know the truth? Elena's mother needs $15,000 for cancer treatment. Elena could have asked me for that money a week ago, and I would have given it to her happily. But she didn't ask. She'd rather watch her mother suffer than prove people like you right about her motives. Alexander paused, letting that sink in. So here's what's going to happen. David, you're out. I'm buying out your share of the company immediately. You can't do that, David protested. Actually, I can. Check your contract. Alexander had spent the morning with his lawyers making sure of it. He looked around the table again. As for the rest of you, if anyone has a problem with who I choose to spend my personal time with, you're welcome to find other investment opportunities. No one said a word. Meanwhile, Elena was at home, staring at loan applications she couldn't qualify for. Her phone had been ringing all morning with reporters wanting comments about the scandal, so she'd turned it off. She felt completely alone. There was a knock at her door. Elena assumed it was another reporter and almost didn't answer. But when she looked through the peephole, she saw Rita standing there with coffee and donuts. You look terrible, Rita said. When Elena opened the door, thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Rita sat down on Elena's couch. I saw the news this morning. Elena's heart sank. More articles? No. Alexander Reed held a press conference. Elena's eyes widened. He did what? Rita pulled out her phone and showed Elena a video. In it, Alexander stood behind a podium with microphones pointed at him. He looked tired but determined. I'm here to address the false stories that have been published about Elena Rodriguez, Alexander was saying on the video. Miss Rodriguez is a dedicated nurse who has never asked me for anything. The suggestion that she somehow planned our meeting or manipulated our friendship is not only untrue, it's insulting to a woman who works harder than most people I know in the business world. Elena watched in amazement as Alexander continued. Elena Rodriguez represents everything good about healthcare in this city. She cares for her patients with compassion. She works multiple shifts to support her family, and she has never once used our friendship for personal gain. The fact that some people can't believe a friendship could exist between two people from different backgrounds says more about them than it does about us. He paused, looking directly into the camera. I'm also announcing today the creation of the Lily Reed Foundation, which will provide financial assistance to healthcare workers and their families facing medical crises. Elena Rodriguez will be serving as the foundation's director if she chooses to accept the position. The video ended with reporters shouting questions, but Alexander walking away without answering them. Elena stared at Rita's phone. He offered, "Me a job? Not just any job. Look up this foundation online." Elena grabbed her laptop and searched for the Lily Reed Foundation. What she found made her gasp. Alexander had committed $50 million to help healthcare workers and their families. The foundation would provide grants for medical expenses, educational assistance, and emergency financial support. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Michael Chen, Mr. Reed's lawyer. Mr. Reed would like to meet with you today about the foundation position if you're interested. The salary is $75,000 per year, plus health benefits. This offer has nothing to do with your personal relationship with Mr. Reed. You were chosen because of your experience in healthcare and your understanding of what families go through during medical crises." Elena read the message 3 times. $75,000 was more than she made as a nurse, even with overtime. It was enough to help her mother and still have a real life. But was it real? Or was this Alexander's way of trying to solve her problems with money again? 2 hours later, Elena met Alexander at a coffee shop downtown. He looked nervous, which was strange to see on someone usually so confident. "You created a foundation," Elena said without preamble. "Yes? And you want me to run it?" "Yes. But not because we're friends. Because you're qualified." Alexander leaned forward. "Elena, you know what it's like to worry about paying for medical care. You know what families go through. You understand the healthcare system from the inside. I could hire some business executive with an MBA, but they wouldn't understand the people we're trying to help." Elena studied his face. "This isn't about us, is it?" "No. Well, partly." Alexander ran his hand through his hair. "I realized something yesterday. I've been trying to fix your problems because that's what I do. I solve things with money, but that's not what you need from me. What do I need from you? A friend who respects your choices, someone who believes in your abilities, an equal partner, not a benefactor." Elena was quiet for a long moment. The foundation would really help people. It would help thousands of people. And you'd be helping them, not me. This would be your work, your decisions. What about us? What about all the gossip and the problems with different worlds? Alexander smiled sadly. Maybe David was right about one thing. Maybe we are from different worlds. But I think that might be exactly why we need each other. You keep me grounded, and maybe I can help you see that accepting help doesn't make you weak. Elena thought about her mother, waiting for treatment in Phoenix. She thought about all the other families facing the same impossible choices. She thought about Lily, who would have loved the idea of helping other people. "I have conditions," Elena said finally. "Name them." "First, I want total control over how the foundation operates. No interference from you unless I ask for advice. Done. Second, I want everything to be transparent. Salary, decisions, everything. No one can ever say I'm getting special treatment." "Absolutely." "Third, we need to figure out what we are, to each other separate from work. Because I care about you, Alexander. But I can't be with someone if I'm always wondering whether people think I'm just after your money." Alexander reached across the table and took her hand. "Elena, I've met a lot of people who wanted things from me. You're the first person who's tried to give things back. You're the first person who sees me as just Alexander, not Alexander Reed the billionaire." Elena looked down at their joined hands. "It's going to be complicated. The best things usually are." 6 months later, Elena stood in the lobby of the new Lily Reed Foundation offices, watching as families received checks to help with their medical expenses. A construction worker whose wife had lupus, a teacher whose son needed surgery, a retired couple facing bankruptcy because of prescription costs. Alexander walked up beside her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "How does it feel?" "Like we're actually making a difference," Elena said, taking the coffee gratefully. "Lily would be proud." "She would be proud of you," Alexander corrected. This was your vision. I just provided the funding. Elena smiled. They'd figured out how to make it work, as business partners during the day and as something more personal in the evenings. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. You know what the best part is? Elena said, watching a mother cry with relief as she received a grant for her daughter's treatment. What? Nobody can say I'm with you for your money anymore. I have my own money now. Alexander laughed. Is that why you agreed to date me, for the financial independence? Maybe, Elena said with a grin. That and the fact that you make really good coffee. As they stood there together, watching people receive help during their darkest moments, Elena realized that sometimes the most unexpected meetings lead to the most meaningful connections. And sometimes, caring about someone means building something bigger than both of you.